I wanted to highlight this ivermectin story that came out yesterday. So, right-wing media for months, I mean, that you don't hear much about it anymore. Well, to them, it's partially because COVID is over. But for months, I kept hearing on right-wing shows, why aren't we looking into ivermectin? This shows a lot of promise. And I think we were fairly measured on our show. We made fun of certain, Joe Rogan types and Joe Rogan guests, calling it some sort of miracle cure, but we didn't rule out the possibility that it might mitigate some of the effects to an extent, even though it did not seem to be overwhelming evidence as the right suggested. We were open to that possibility.
Yeah, the main problem that I had with it was not so much to suggest that it might have some applicability towards COVID, but that there was a conspiracy. Both certain folks would have limited to just the media was conspiring to make us scientists not able to study a drug, which is ridiculous. But also there was folks more on the right wing side of things, as opposed to like the contrarian grifter side of things, that would suggest that it's all doctors are in on this vast conspiracy to suppress a
big pharma
cure.
is
Exactly.
Yeah, as they would profit from any ivermectin sales, since big pharma makes ivermectin.
The idea being all these doctors that were working overtime for years and watching people die in front of them, that they had a cure available to them, and they just decided not to because they're actually pharma drones.
Yeah, right, exactly. And there were some doctors, though, that still did prescribe ivermectin to people. Sure. Republican doctors, well, most likely right-wing doctors.
But also plenty of doctors that thought that this new drug may have had some sort of effect, and we'll try it out, because guess what? It wasn't suppressed, actually. There were trials all over the world all the time.
And now there's been a massive trial. A massive study in Brazil. So this is from the New York Times. A new study, which looked at more than 1,300 people infected with the coronavirus, effectively ruled out ivermectin as a useful treatment for COVID, the researchers said. The anti-parasitic drug ivermectin, which has surged in popularity as an alternative treatment for COVID-19, despite a lack of strong research to back it up, showed no sign of alleviating the disease, according to results of a large clinical trial published on Wednesday. So the study was done in Brazil. They compared 1,300 people who received either ivermectin or a placebo. And Dr. David Boulwar, an infectious disease expert at the University of Minnesota, says, quote, "There's really no sign of any benefit. For decades, ivermectin has been widely used to treat parasitic infections. Early in the pandemic, when researchers were trying thousands of old drugs against COVID-19, laboratory experiments on cells suggested that ivermectin might block the coronavirus. At the time, skeptics pointed out that the experiments worked thanks to high concentrations of the drug, far beyond safe levels for people. Nevertheless, some doctors began prescribing ivermectin for COVID-19 despite a warning from the FDA that it was not approved for such use." All right, but now we've had some time. There have been studies, and this study, I think it's the Brazil team is called the Together team, found this. The Together team reported on its ivermectin data that between March and August 2021, the researchers provided the drug to 679 patients over the course of 3 days. So the larger study was 1,300, but the people who got the drug were 679 in total. The results were clear. Taking ivermectin did not reduce a COVID patient's risk of ending up in the hospital. The researchers zeroed in on different groups of volunteers to see if they experienced benefits that others didn't. For example, it might be possible that ivermectin only worked if taken early in an infection. But volunteers who took ivermectin in the first 3 days after a positive coronavirus test turned out to have worse outcomes than did those in the placebo group. And this New York Times piece concludes with Dr. Paul Sachs, an infectious disease expert at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, who was not involved in the Together trial, says this: "I welcome the results of the other clinical trials and will view them with an open mind. But at some point, it will become a waste of resources to continue studying an unpromising approach."
Yeah, I mean, it was really gross the way people portrayed the ivermectin hustlers as anything. What they were besides what they were is branding themselves as oracles to scientific truth. That's all they were interested in this story. And what they ended up doing is using like things that are true about our pharmaceutical system, like pharmaceutical companies aren't motivated by the incentives that we want them to
which is how all conspiracy theories spread to the degree that to a larger degree, because, or not conspiracy theories, but false information, if they have kernels of truth, which is that, yeah, big pharma does screw us.
And it's to lead them into a predatory relationship with somebody who can provide them a monthly dosage of ivermectin, because everyone will focus on like, oh, ivermectin is actually a lot cheaper than a single dose of like monoclonal antibodies. You have to take it monthly. Like when we watch this Bret Weinstein clip here of Bret Weinstein and the other Joe Rogan COVID gurus. Like we talk about all this Joe Rogan stuff. These guys here,
Dark Horse podcast,
from the Dark Horse podcast. This was a while ago, and I got a longer article to sort of like read in if you want to read in on these guys. But let's play this clip of the way they were talking about ivermectin, just to get an idea of like why we say like if somebody listened to these guys and decided not to get the vaccine and then died, like
the free vaccine, as opposed to the purchasing of ivermectin from big pharma on a monthly basis to take it prophylactically, right? Yeah. Okay, just making clear in terms of like which route gives more money to big pharma. Yeah.
So Bret asks a former healthcare CEO about this.
I should also point out that our viewers will have noticed that we are sitting here unmasked. And I should point out that actually we are, in an interesting sense, a model of something that I believe is not on the public radar. So if I'm correct, you, Robert, have had COVID.
I've had COVID and I've been fully vaccinated with Moderna.
All right. Steve, you have been vaccinated.
Fully vaccinated with Moderna.
All right. I am unvaccinated, but I am on prophylactic ivermectin. And the data actually, shocking as this will be to some people, the data suggests that prophylactic ivermectin is something like 100% effective at preventing people from contracting COVID when taken properly. So aside from the risk that possibly...
So some people that would be shocking to would be the doctors and clinical researchers that have studied that claim. And I want to put up this, if you take that down, Bradley.
100% effective from contracting COVID.
Yeah,
COVID.
Not even hospitalization.
No.
Which is an insane claim to make. And there's this article here. I'll go to the top 1 second. I got another one here. It's called on vaccine safety, ivermectin, and the Dark Horse podcast, an investigation. Sorry, Medium wants me to sign in. And so this is David Fuller. He's a journalist and documentary maker for Channel 4 of the BBC, The Economist. This is a really long, it's 51-minute read there. So it's a really in-depth discussion of this. And I cut out just wait 1 more second, Bradley. And what he says there is really important as far as the prophylactic point. I'm just going to read it.
Okay, yeah.
Because it's hard for me to do it up there. But Brett and Heather began their Substack paper with an argument that ivermectin should be used as a prophylactic against COVID. And consider how Brett has called ivermectin something like 100% effective when taken properly in preventing catching COVID-19. This is a consequential claim. Being a claim on prophylaxis, this may lead people to take ivermectin instead of the vaccines. That's always the point. And everybody who obscured that point should feel ashamed and should feel guilty about leading people into like a dumb media wormhole for this, like these grifters that are absolute charlatans, and they got people killed.
100%. I mean, we can draw a direct connection with Dark Horse podcast. We highlighted that on the show, but you know, there's a bunch of people that we probably don't know about, and all of this is just a very deadly trapeze performance, or what do you call it? That's when you walk across the tightrope, right? Yeah, tightrope. Jeez, more coffee for me. But like, I mean, in order to brand oneself as somebody providing unique information that is outside the mainstream, that means if you consume it, you are also unique, and you have access to special knowledge outside of societal norms that you might feel isolated from for different reasons. Yeah. And in the end, it really only serves the people who are putting out that kind of media content. when they're able to differentiate themselves in that way, but also present as very scientific and measured and appropriately approaching these topics with like a clear eye, then it's really just a way for them to dupe you and then make money for themselves. Because people don't. We're conditioned not to want to feel a part of the collective, and when it gives you some sort of like individual moral differentiator, or you're able to perceive yourself as above society, then that's tantalizing.
The Weinsteins are pathologically exactly that. These are guys who are, let's just face it, Peter Thiel linked charlatans who are publicity stunt artists. Eric Weinstein literally thinks that him and his brother and another sibling should all have Nobel prizes for different sort of, and it's this, and he literally has a phrase for the distributed idea suppression complex. That is the reason that they don't have their Nobel prizes. These people are absolute charlatans and jokes, and anybody who couldn't see through that, their credibility is in judgment, as far as I'm concerned. As far as I don't blame audiences of these folks. I'm talking about media people.